Go back inside and stay there!
The familiar, comforting sound of birdsong was in the air, accompanied by the gentle hiss of a kettle reaching its peak. Black 67-year-old Martha Lee, Martha stood in her small kitchen, patiently awaiting her cup of tea. However, the routine quiet was violently broken by 3 sharp, authoritative knocks. 3 raps, followed by an unnerving silence. Mrs. Martha approached her door, peering through the peephole, fully expecting to see the young neighbor, or perhaps the mail carrier. Instead, a sheriff's badge filled her view, held by a man gripping a legal document. "Mrs. Martha, I'm afraid you are under arrest." She stood frozen, convinced this had to be a dreadful error. Arrested? For what reason? The deputy, visibly ill at ease, delivered the humiliating truth: failure to appear in court for medical debt collection. 5 payments had been missed, the creditor had filed a motion, and an order had been approved. Martha did not shout, she did not weep. She simply stared, utterly devastated, as the kitchen kettle began to shriek, a sound that seemed to wail for her lost composure. Only 2 weeks prior, she had been at a clinic for a routine follow-up after a mild stroke months before. No one had warned her that merely stepping into that building again without insurance would incur another $300 charge. She had barely managed to pay off the ambulance from her initial episode. She had submitted a money order for $50, the maximum she could possibly spare, and requested a payment arrangement. It seems the system had deemed her efforts inadequate. Her youngest granddaughter, Tasha, only 7, was sleeping in the adjacent room when law enforcement secured Martha in handcuffs and escorted her out in her simple house slippers. Peeking through the window blinds, Tasha watched her grandmother vanish into the back of a county patrol car. No one explained the situation. They simply ordered the little girl to remain inside. That morning, Martha's sudden absence settled over her home and her loved ones like a growing, painful bruise. No news camera captured the scene. There were no flashing headlines, just an elderly black woman taken from her residence for a debt she had genuinely tried to address. But that, tragically, was only the prologue. What Martha was unaware of was that her arrest was not an anomaly. It was a symptom of a shadowy, entrenched system that exploited antiquated laws and harsh enforcement to convert unpaid invoices into prison sentences. As her family began to investigate, they quickly realized this wasn't about one grandmother. It was about hundreds, and powerful entities were profiting from every single incarceration. Have you ever felt like a system meant to protect you was actively working against you? What happens when the pursuit of justice is outsourced and the most vulnerable people become the literal currency? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Make sure you stick around and watch till the end, because this story will expose places no major headline dares to go. You can as well share this video with someone who still thinks this could never happen. And don't forget to subscribe, because Toss Stories uncovers what the world forgets. Martha Lee Anderson never once envisioned spending a single night, let alone multiple weeks, incarcerated. The heavy, cold metal door of the county jail crashed shut behind her, marking the definitive, brutal end of her freedom. Standing small and utterly out of place in the holding cell, her fingers trembled, still bearing the painful red marks from the tight handcuffs. The ill-fitting beige uniform they provided reeked faintly of institutional bleach and deep, old regret. Inside the jail, time itself became an active form of torment. There were no visible clocks, only the shifting, dreary colors of the fluorescent lights and the measured, slow echo of the guards' footsteps. The walls were a depressing institutional gray, and the floor always carried the uncomfortable sensation of dampness. She found herself sharing a space with 2 others: Brianna, a young white woman, barely 20, arrested for pilfering formula and diapers, and Janice, a middle-aged black woman, detained for the technical violation of failing to remit a court fee on time. Initially, conversation was sparse, but as the lights dimmed on that first night and the unit settled into an uneasy quiet, Brianna broke the silence with a soft query. "What did they get you for?" Martha drew a measured breath. "Medical debt," she simply replied. The admission was followed by a silence, then Janice's quiet, firm response: "Ain't right. Ain't right at all." The atmosphere subtly changed. From that moment on, they began to share small comforts, memories of their children, missing foods, and music that symbolized freedom. Each morning brought the routine delivery of a tin tray, lukewarm grits, hard toast, weak coffee, shoved through the door slot. The guards maintained a perpetual scowl. One, Officer Brinks, seemed to delight in singling out Martha, barking harsh commands as if she were a hardened criminal. "Hurry up, Grandma," he would sneer. Yet Martha maintained her grace. Her back remained straight, even in the shuffling line, and her voice gentle. Every evening, she sat on her bunk, tracing the pages of a worn Bible, whispering prayers that barely reached above the constant hum of the lights. One afternoon, she was led to a small side room, clearly a repurposed storage closet, for a phone call. It was her daughter, Denise. Hearing Denise's voice shattered the isolation. "Mama, I'm so sorry. I thought they couldn't do that anymore." Martha corrected her. "They didn't arrest me for bills, baby. They arrested me for being too poor to pay a fine attached to a civil judgment. That's how they get around it." Denise, heartbroken, whispered that Tasha had been constantly asking for her. This news was the single moment Martha's composure truly fractured. What would you do if you were separated from your loved ones over an unfair fine? "Tell her grandma's just on a little trip," she managed to say. Later that week, Janice showed her how to submit a grievance form. Martha carefully wrote down the details of her arrest, her illness, and the medications she was now deprived of. The letter ended with a powerful statement that lodged itself in the mind of the reviewing officer. This isn't justice. This is forgetting people in plain sight. Outside the facility walls, Martha's unjust incarceration had started to create ripples across social media. It began with a heartfelt Facebook post from Denise, featuring a photograph of Tasha clutching a handmade sign that simply asked, "Where's Grandma?" A local journalist who remembered Martha from community fundraisers years ago picked up the narrative. The article, titled "Grandmother Jailed Over Medical Debt in 2025, sparked instant outrage. A single tweet, a photograph, an authentic cry of injustice. That was all it took. Soon, news vans began to congregate around the county courthouse. Civil rights organizations initiated inquiries, and an assistant to a state senator discreetly requested a comprehensive report on her detention. Inside, Martha remained oblivious. Her immediate reality was the agonizing awareness that she had missed Tasha's school play, that her blood pressure was dangerously high, and that her essential prescriptions were long gone. Neither the hospital billing company nor her court-appointed lawyer had provided any relief. She began keeping a journal, a cheap spiral notebook, filling it with prayers, cherished memories of Tasha's laughter, and letters she knew she couldn't mail. On the 28th day of her confinement, a crucial change occurred. A new inmate, Rose, arrived, charged with contempt after publicly speaking out about the mistreatment of her disabled son. That night, Rose approached Martha and shared stunning news. "I read about you out there. They're starting to care." Martha registered the words slowly. "Out there?" Rose nodded. "Your story is moving people." For the first time in almost a month, Martha allowed herself a fragile smile, not because freedom felt near, but because she realized she hadn't been completely erased. The next morning, Officer Brinks waited at her cell, face impassive. "Get dressed, you've got a visitor." Martha's heart pounded. In the visitation room, it wasn't Denise waiting. A woman in a navy blazer, briefcase in hand, flashed a card, Legal Aid Foundation, Wrongful Detainment Division. "We've been following your case, Mrs. Anderson," she said, leaning in. "You were never supposed to be here." Court came quickly. Martha sat on the bench, uniform beige and unflattering, yet her spirit unbroken. Across the room, the hospital's young, suited representative clicked through documents, indifferent to the woman his company had jailed. Miss Remy, her court-appointed attorney, urged a settlement. Sign a wage garnishment. Contempt charge dropped. Martha was appalled. "Wages? I'm retired. I live on my husband's pension and food stamps." "They're hoping you'll panic and sign," Miss Remy warned. Martha rose to address the judge. Her voice trembled, then steadied. She spoke of her life, her family, and the injustice of being jailed for collapsing in church. "I'm not asking for sympathy. I want fairness. I want to pay what I owe, but not from jail." The courtroom fell silent. The air thickened with her truth. The judge turned to the hospital lawyer. "Do you really want a trial over $1,739? The lawyer shrugged. Finally, the judge ruled. Martha would be released under supervised negotiation, the contempt charge dismissed, and recommended the case be reviewed for abuse of civil enforcement. Stepping into the cool morning air, she whispered a single profound thank you. What would you whisper in that fragile moment of freedom? That evening, the news ran the clip. Free Martha wasn't enough. Outrage spread nationwide, igniting a conversation about debt and incarceration. Martha Anderson, 72, sat behind cold iron bars over a $4,832 medical bill, a debt she had already paid. But her story was just one of many, a hidden pattern of injustice trapping elderly Black residents in a cruel system. Civil rights attorney Janelle Cross dug deeper, uncovering a shocking truth. Judge Roland Meeks had colluded with a private collections firm, using the courts to force unpaid labor from inmates. The storm broke. Meeks was arrested. The corrupt firm was shut down. And a new law, the Anderson Act, banned jailing people over medical debt, protecting the vulnerable. Martha walked free, her courage exposing corruption, forcing accountability, and lighting a path for justice. From the other side of silence, Toss Stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story to push it forward. Share it so the next Martha doesn't suffer in silence. Let's make sure these stories are never buried again.